Yeah, you read that right. Top 100 Fire Emblem characters with dead parents. If you don't know a lot about Fire Emblem, you might be scared, confused, and perhaps a little bit constipated. If you do know a lot about Fire Emblem, you're probably like, what? Only 100? I could name like 100 Fire Emblem orphans in my sleep. And look, a character having dead parents is one of the most common tropes in fiction. It provides a great excuse to bring your characters into dangerous situations unsupervised, and it's an easy-bake tragic backstory. Fire Emblem is perhaps the series best known for overusing this trope, and for good reason. Even holding myself back with certain restrictions, I was able to create this list of 100 characters and honorable mentions who have dead parents or are orphans with no reason to assume that their parents are even alive. For the record, I'm not just counting characters that never mention their parents, period. They have to be orphans or at least have one confirmed parental death with no confirmed living parents. To make things even just a little bit difficult, I excluded all characters with variable parents from Generation 2 of Genealogy of the Holy War, even the ones that appear in Thracia. I also could have included all the children from Awakening whose parents are dead in their respective timelines, but I didn't. I also just avoided old people. You also might be wondering how I'm choosing to structure this list. There is no structure. The order is meaningless, it's just a list. And of course, I'm about to spoil every game in the whole franchise, up until and including Three Houses. Number 100, Hugh from Binding Blade. Hugh's father is Canas from Fire Emblem 7, and to give some context, Fire Emblem 7 is a prequel to Fire Emblem 6. It was a prequel that was made afterwards, and in the epilogue, it is stated that Canas dies while trying to stop a snowstorm with his wife. This has become something of a meme in the community because, like, how would you stop a snowstorm? How would you die trying to do it? Anyway, Hugh was raised by his grandmother Nime, who will not be on the list despite probably also having dead parents. Number 99, Raphael from Three Houses. Raphael's parents were merchants, and they were assumed to have died because of a monster attack while they were doing a job on behalf of Ignat's parents. However, it is revealed that the monster attacks were coordinated by Lorenz's father as a way to assassinate someone more important. Nonetheless, they died as he lives as a big, wholesome Reddit chungoid r/made me smile. I'm gonna stop talking now, next entry. Number 98, Peleus from Radiant Dawn. Yeah, this is going to throw someone for a loop. In the beginning of the game, you're led to believe that his parents are Almedha and King Ashnard, the main villain of Path of Radiance. However, this is actually not the case. He's just an orphan. I guess a major antagonist of Radiant Dawn, Izuka, was just dropping in on orphanages, looking for someone who resembled Ashnard so that he could control the now kingless Dayan via a puppet monarch. Number 97, Pan from Awakening. Pan is the last survivor of the Tagul, a race of furries that had all died before the start of Awakening. Through context, we can assume that her parents are dead, and she makes no references to them being alive throughout the game. Number 96, Lyn from Blazing Blade. The first lord on the list of many. Lyn's father was the leader of the Lorca tribe of Sakai, and he eloped with the noblewoman of House Kaelin. Her parents were later killed in a bandit attack, which is a common occurrence in these games. Number 95, Chad from Binding Blade. Chad is an orphan thief, and I'm sure I will never get tired of saying that a character is an orphan thief. Number 94, Ash from Three Houses. Ash is an orphan thief, or at least he was before getting adopted by Lord Lonato. His mother is dead, his father is also probably dead, I'm not sure if the game is explicit about it, and then Lord Lonato dies. Woo, we've got our first double orphan on the list. Give him a round of applause. Number 93, Jafar from Blazing Blade. Jafar is an orphan thief, but promoted. There's little to no information about his parents. I'm not sure if we can really gather that his parents are actually dead from the context of the game, but you know, it's really more of a top 100 orphans list anyway, and he really doesn't imply that they're alive ever, so he's good. Number 92, Soth from Path of Radiance. I really like Soth's character in Radiant Dawn, and I really like the dysfunctional relationship he has going on with Micaiah. In Path of Radiance, however, he is little more than an orphan thief, and I believe there is no information about his parentage in either game. 91 and 90, Micaiah and Sanaki from Radiant Dawn. To the dismay of many, Micaiah is the protagonist of Radiant Dawn. Sanaki is in both games, and as you may have guessed, they are siblings. Their grandmother was the apostle of Benion, who is said to be able to hear the voice of the goddess. She was assassinated, and we can assume that their parents were in this event as well, as their parents are never mentioned, never spoken of, and Micaiah is left alone to be an orphan, and Sanaki is made empress despite just being a child. If their parents were still alive, it just wouldn't make any sense, and frankly, they'd have a lot of explaining to do why they left one of their kids to be an orphan and the other one to be an empress at the age of 5. Number 89. Aron from Radiant Dawn. Since Aron has like 5 lines of dialogue, you may be surprised to learn that they even found the time to mention that he was an orphan, but there's always time for orphans in Fire Emblem. After living in the same town as Laura, he would eventually get adopted by Benion merchants and then join the army. His biological parents are not mentioned. Number 88. Sylvia from Genealogy of the Holy War. Sylvia was an orphan who had an abusive adoptive father. Apparently, within the context of Genealogy, it is implied that Sylvia is Claude's sister, which would mean that her parents are alive, but this information is contradicted by other sources which infer that they are cousins. Also, Claude and Sylvia can have kids together. Can't wait for that Genealogy remake to either clear up or double down on the orphans or incest. Number 87. Joshua from Sacred Stones. Joshua's mother, Isamair, took over the throne after Joshua's father had already died before the game begins. During the events of the game, she ends up being killed by Joshua's former comrade, Calais. Number 86. La Arachelle from Sacred Stones. When La Arachelle was young, her parents died fighting against monsters which came from Darkling Woods. La Arachelle apparently learned nothing from this and took up their crusade to fight against monsters while she was still a teenager. Number 85. Dorothea from Three Houses. Dorothea is an orphan. She doesn't mention anything about her parents' deaths, but she will constantly remind you that she grew up a poor street urchin with no parents. Number 84. Aversa from Awakening. Aversa was born with innate magical talent. When Valadar, the extremely subtle antagonist of Awakening, finds her, he decides to kill everyone with close ties to her and brainwash her into believing she is an orphan whom he adopted. All of this was to make sure she never breaks free from his evil grip. I would also just like to add... Number 83, Shez from Three Hopes. I didn't play this game. I had Silk here before realizing her parents are probably alive, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be extremely convenient and funny if the main character of Three Hopes also had dead parents? Well, yeah, he does. 82 and 81, Robert and Kane from Thracia 776. These cavaliers from Thracia may not explicitly say they are orphans within the context of the game, but there's very little dialogue in the game at all, and according to their description on the official website of Thracia 776, they are described as war orphans, and if I don't mention them here, no one else will. Seriously, who are these guys again? Number 80, Katarina from New Mystery of the Emblem. Katarina is a character exclusive to New Mystery of the Emblem, which itself is a remake of Fire Emblem Mystery of the Emblem Book 2. Anyway, Katarina is a spy assassin who was raised in an orphanage that trained orphans to be assassins. She was sent to kill Marth from Super Smash Bros. Melee. Obviously, she stands no chance. Marth is S tier. She doesn't even come across as particularly capable either, as her mannerisms mirror those of, like, Hinata from Naruto, even down to her hopeless obsession over the main character. Number 79, Hayato from Fates. Hayato's biological parents are dead before the start of the game, but his adopted father is Fuga, who is a recruitable boss in the Revelations route of Fates. I'm not really sure why they didn't just write Fuga to be his biological father. After all, you can still kill him. Number 78, Fiona from Radiant Dawn. Fiona's dad is a really strange character because he is one of the 4 generals of Dayan, and he should be important, but he never makes an appearance in Path of Radiance and is just dead by Radiant Dawn. And her mother is just unmentioned. Number 77, Myrrh from Sacred Stones. I had thought of her as one of the first characters when making this list, because in the story, she's trying to get back to her father, Morva, and then Morva turns into a zombie dragon and you have to kill him. But then I found out that Morva isn't even her actual father, and that her real parents were dead before the start of the game, and Morva was just her adoptive father. So that means she is another character who is a double orphan. Number 76, Edward from Radiant Dawn. Most detailed information about characters are relegated to their supports, and in Radiant Dawn, detailed supports were removed for generic supports between most characters. This was probably because the cast of Radiant Dawn was really big and you had to divide up the cast into several smaller teams midway through the game. And so instead of writing a whole bunch of supports for a whole bunch of characters, they just decided to make everybody support with everybody, but use generic dialogue 90% of the time. Fortunately, the designer's notes give us some insight onto the Radiant Dawn original characters that are otherwise left pretty much without dialogue, and according to the designer's notes for Edward, he had no family, he lived on the streets, and now he's on the list. Congratulations, Edward. Number 75, Leonardo from Radiant Dawn. Leonardo is a lot like Edward. He's an original character who is introduced in the very first chapter of Radiant Dawn, and they're actually friends. Leonardo is also an orphan, although we do get a little bit more about his parentage. In the designer's notes, it's revealed that Leonardo was the son of a noble, but his father and older brother had died in the Mad King's War. They were probably just some random archers that Ike one-shot, and his mother soon died afterwards. Number 74, Hubert from Three Houses. Hubert killed his own father, Marquis Vestra, for his involvement in an attempted coup called the Insurrection of the Seven, which takes place many years before the start of Three Houses. As far as I know, his mother is unmentioned. Number 73, Lot from Binding Blade. In an unusual twist, Lot's father is never mentioned. His mother was being taken care of by Wade's sister, Mary, before dying of an illness. During Chapter 10, Caught in the Middle, you are able to visit her house with Lot and get special dialogue with Lot's little sister, where she confirms that their mother has passed away. Number 72, Lewin from Genealogy of the Holy War. In the beginning of the game, Lewin is a wandering bard who is called back to his home country to become king. Lewin's mother Rana is the Queen of Silice and is a character present in the game, but dies at an unknown point during the time skip. 71 and 70, Erica and Ephraim from Sacred Stones. Erica and Ephraim are siblings and the deuteragonists of Sacred Stones. Their father dies in the first cutscene of the game, which is surprisingly not even a record for Fire Emblem protagonists. I don't recall their mother ever being mentioned, but if she were alive, it would have been more than noteworthy. Number 69, Camilla from Fates. Camilla's mother is an unnamed concubine of King Garen. Camilla was used by her mother in what fans call the Concubine Wars, where Garen's many mistresses and their children engaged in Game of Thrones-esque shenanigans to curry his favor. Camilla's mother is not outwardly stated to be dead, but rather she is referred to in the past tense, and Garen dies at the end of each route. Number 68, Xander from Fates. Xander is Camilla's half-brother. Son to King Garen, he is the only child of the late Queen Katarina. She is said to have died before the start of Fates, though I don't believe there is any info on how or why. Number 67 and 66, Boyd and Oscar from Path of Radiance. You might be wondering why the third brother, Rolf, isn't listed. In Radiant Dawn, there's a house in 3-1 where, should you visit it with any of the three brothers, then that brother will have a short run-in with Rolf's mother. After the chapter, you will have unlocked the base conversation where Rolf's mother tells of how she married the boy's father after Boyd and Oscar's mother had passed. Boyd and Oscar reprimand her for abandoning them while their father, her husband, was dying. When the boys go to tell Rolf, he refuses to even meet her, and then in the English translation, Rolf mistakenly says he isn't related to Boyd even though they're still half-siblings. Number 65, Hector from Blazing Blade. Hector's parents died of a disease before the start of the game, which is why his older brother Uther is the ruling monarch in FE7. Number 64, Lilina from Binding Blade. Lilina's father is Hector from Blazing Blade. He is severely injured and jailed by Byrne's forces, who invade his castle in an early chapter of Binding Blade. He later succumbs to his wounds when Roy rescues him. In the context of Fire Emblem 6, her mother is unmentioned, though it could be one of multiple characters from Fire Emblem 7. Number 63, Petra from Three Houses. Petra's father was killed by Casper's father in a war between her country Brigid and the Adrestian Empire. She was sent to live in the Empire as a sort of political hostage, but then develops like Stockholm Syndrome or something and just stays there for the entirety of the game. Number 62, Gonzalez from Binding Blade. You might think this one is a little out of left field, but in his B support with Garrett, he says, "You have parents. I not have." Very sad, Gonzalez. I imagine a lot of players never saw this support, as Garrett is not a very popular character in Binding Blade, and the amount of supports you can do with one character in a single playthrough is limited. Gonzalez also has a romantic support with Alina, which just goes to show that sometimes the ugly dastard does get the underage girl. Number 61, Garrett from Binding Blade. Yep, in that very same support conversation with Gonzalez, Garrett professes that his parents were killed in a bandit attack when he was a kid. 8 years later, he found and killed the bandits that were responsible. He can also support with Alina, by the way. Number 60 and 59, Tethys and Ewan from Sacred Stones. Ewan is a part of Garrick's mercenary gang, alongside his sister Tethys, who became a dancer to support him after the death of their parents. I don't have a joke at the end of this entry, so hopefully the way that I pronounced their names was funny enough. Unless that is how their names are pronounced. Number 58, Mozu from Fates. Mozu is introduced in the first paralogue of Fates, Tragic Start. Mozu's entire village, including her mother, are killed by monsters known as Faceless. Moments later, Corrin arrives to induct the newly parentless little girl into your army. 57, 56, and 55. This trio is Shauna, Thea, and Juno from Binding Blade. Thea states in a support conversation with Zealot that her mother was a Pegasus rider, and both her mother and father died on the same battlefield when the Pegasisters were young, leaving Juno to take care of them. Fun fact, Juno and Zealot also have a child together, so if you wanted to create another Fire Emblem character with dead parents, you can just let them die in your run. 54, Jill from Path of Radiance. Jill's father is a boss in Path of Radiance, and if you talk to him, Jill will defect to the enemy side. You know, considering how many people defect from the enemy's armies in Fire Emblem, it's a wonder that this type of thing doesn't happen more often. Anyway, you do have to kill him, and her mother is not mentioned. 53 and 52, Rai and Lou from Binding Blade. Their mother is Nino from Blazing Blade. Nino disappears when bounty hunters come after her, but there's nothing to imply that she is still alive by Binding Blade. While I wouldn't usually put a character like this on the list, I feel somewhat justified in doing so, because when Rai and Lou were introduced in Binding Blade, they were simply orphans, and there was nothing to imply that either of their parents were alive. Number 51, Nino from Blazing Blade. Nino has it hard. Her parents were murdered when she was young, and then she was abducted by Sonia. Sonia then married Brendan Reed, who, alongside his sons, would make for a loving adoptive family. However, by the end of the game, they will all die. Gotta love those double orphans. 50 and 49, Zephiel and Guinevere from Binding Blade. Zephiel is the main antagonist of Binding Blade, and Guinevere is a supporting character, and his half-sister. Their father, King Desmond, is killed by Zephiel, get this, at Zephiel's fake funeral after Desmond fails an assassination attempt against him. Desmond is looking over the coffin, and Zephiel is like, "Psych, I'm alive," and stabs him. That's some creative writing right there. Desmond is revealed to have wanted Zephiel's mother assassinated, but whether or not she is actually dead is not explicitly stated, but she doesn't appear in Binding Blade. Guinevere has a different mother, who, to my knowledge, is unmentioned. 48, Lion from Sacred Stones. Lion's father, Emperor Vigard, dies of a sickness before the start of the game. Lion uses dark magic to reanimate the Emperor. With Vigard's mind and soul absent from this empty vessel, Prince Lion commands the armies of Grotto, using his father's corpse as a proxy for his will. In Ephraim's route of the game, you'll be tasked with killing Vigard once more. 47 and 46, Nils and Ninian from Blazing Blade. Nils and Ninian are introduced as a bard and a dancer on the run from assassins led by Nurgle, the main antagonist of the game. While the story is slightly obscured by a poor English translation, their mother is Aenir, an ice dragon who had gone missing long before the events of the game. Their father is Nurgle, and he sent his children through the Dragon's Gate to keep them safe when their mother went missing. After hundreds of years of seeking power and knowledge to reopen the gate, dark magic would twist his ambition and cause him to forget his wife and children. Number 45, Lucius from Blazing Blade. Lucius' father was killed by a thief, and his mother died of a sickness shortly thereafter. 44 and 43, Raven and Priscilla from Blazing Blade. Raven and Priscilla hailed from House Cornwell, which was dissolved after they were caught stealing funds from the Lycian League, a group of neighboring houses. As a result, their parents were executed for their crimes before the events of the game. Number 42, Ashnard from Path of Radiance. Ashnard tricked his father into signing a blood pact, a document that binds one party into absolute obedience to the other. The day after his father, the king, broke the blood pact, one Daean citizen died. The next day, 2 fell to the ground. The next day, 3 citizens died. This continued until everyone who preceded Ashnard in the royal line of succession had died. At that point, Ashnard killed his father to become king himself. Number 41, Naesala from Path of Radiance. Naesala is a little bit of a unique case because he doesn't actually mention either of his parents, but he has a unique circumstance. You see, the former king of Kilvos had signed and broken a blood pact. This blood pact had killed roughly half the population of Kilvos over 100 days. That would amount to 5,050 dead ravens, just in case you are wondering. It's reasonable to assume that both of Naesala's parents had died in this, as he was unmarried and would have had no other claim to the throne. Number 40, Gangrel from Awakening. Gangrel was a young thief born in the slums. He witnessed the death of his own mother, and his father is unmentioned. Wait a second, another orphan thief? Number 39, Alencia from Path of Radiance. Alencia is a princess of Crimea, though she was kept secret to prevent royals from feuding over the line of succession. Her parents were personally killed by Ashnard when he invaded her country. Number 38 and 37, Sairi and Yenfei from Awakening. Sairi is the princess of Chonsin. Their parents were killed by Walhart when he invaded during or prior to the events of Awakening. Yenfei had agreed to become a general of Walhart's army in exchange for letting Sairi live, so naturally we have to kill him, even though it makes no sense. Number 36, Henry from Awakening. Henry was an orphan mage boy who was raised by wolves. Wait a second, sorry, this is the wrong entry. Number 36, Tormod from Path of Radiance. Tormod was an orphaned mage boy that was raised by wolves. Okay, well, he was raised by Lagoos, which are a race of shape-shifting furries, and how he fell into this situation is totally unexplained. Number 35, Cyril from Three Houses. Cyril's parents were Almiran soldiers who died in battle against Fodlan. Despite this, he seems to harbor no ill will to Fodlan or its people, and in fact is racist towards Almirans. Number 34, Ira from Genealogy. Ira's father is King Mahanan, who was killed by an antagonist Reptor before the events of the game. Her mother is unnamed, but confirmed to be dead. Number 33, 32, and 31, Bloom, Tailtew, and Athena from Genealogy. These are all the children of Reptor. Reptor is of course a boss in Genealogy, so he does end up dead. Their mother is unmentioned. Number 30, Shannon from Genealogy. His father, Miracle, was killed trying to avenge the death of Ira's father. Miracle is also Ira's half-brother, and while his mother isn't mentioned, he also qualifies for this list, but I ran out of numbers, so he's just an honorable mention. 29 and 28, Kurthnaga and Almeda from Radiant Dawn. Their father, Deginsia, is one of the final bosses of Radiant Dawn. And with 100 hit points, 50 defense, and 46 resistance, he is not going down easy. They also have another sibling, Rajajan, although Rajajan dies before Degensi dies, so he doesn't qualify for the list. But he is the Dragon of Ashnard, so you've already seen him in this. Crazy, huh? 27 and 26, Corel and Carla from Blazing Blade. Corel killed his entire family with the exception of Carla and got possessed by the sword. Meanwhile, I'm here reading this getting possessed by cringe. 25 and 24, Franz and Ford from Sacred Stones. Their father died as a knight of Reneus, and their mother had died of poor health. Number 23, 22, and 21, Crom, Lissa, and Emerin from Awakening. In the beginning of Awakening, Emerin is the ruling exalt of Yllis. Their parents had both died before the beginning of the game. Number 20 and 19, Leif and Altena from Genealogy. Leif and Altena are siblings whose parents are Quan and Ethlin. During the final chapter of the first generation, you get to watch in horror as they die in the classic turn-based combat the Fire Emblem series is known for. Number 18 and 17, Sigurd and Ethlin from Genealogy. While their mother had died before the events of the game, their father is Lord Byron. Byron is framed by Reptor for the murder of Prince Kurth. In Chapter 5, Byron appears as a green unit and delivers the Holy Sword Tearfing to Sigurd before succumbing to his wounds. And dude, it's broken. Did you come with 20,000 gold? Cause I'm gonna need 20,000 gold to fix this. Number 16 and 15, Burger King Foot Lettuce. Number 16 and 15, Arvis and Deirdre from Genealogy. Arvis is the son of Duke Victor of Velthamer and Sigun. And I just gotta say, I really love how Shakespearean this game is, but it's also kind of complex, which is why all of the genealogy entries are gonna be like right here. And so Duke Victor was a horrible husband who cheated and abused Sigun, and after he impregnated one of her maidservants, Sigun had an affair with Prince Kurth. So the child of Victor and Sigun is Arvis, the child of Victor and the maidservant is Azel, who's not on the list, and the child of Sigun and Kurth is Deirdre. Upon finding out about Sigun's affair with Prince Kurth, Duke Victor kills himself. Sigun then flees back to the spirit forest she had grown up in, but dies while giving birth to Deirdre. And as we went over in the previous entry, Prince Kurth is assassinated and his death is blamed on Byron. Number 14, 13, 12, and 11, Sias, Julius, Julia, and Seliph from Thracia and Genealogy. Strap in, make some popcorn, this entry is gonna take a while. Julius and Julia are twins born of Arvis and Deirdre, and I wanted to get that out of the way first, and before you try to go back and make sense of those last two entries, yes, Arvis and Deirdre are half-siblings, meaning Julius and Julia are incest babies, but let's rewind a bit. First, Sigurd and Deirdre meet, and despite the fact that Deirdre was told to never interact with outsiders, the two would find themselves madly in love almost instantly. After giving birth to Seliph, Deirdre would be kidnapped and brainwashed by Manfroy, a cultist of Loptir. You see, bloodlines are very important to Genealogy. Not only are they the basis of the namesake of the game, they've also got their own page on the stat screen. Any shining dot around this circle means the person is descended from a legendary crusader who helped seal away the dark dragon Loptis many years ago. Descendants can have either major or minor blood ties, with a major blood tie having greater effects. In the middle, a chaotic purple orb appears in those who are descended from a certain bishop whose ancestor was given blood by Loptir. The descendants of this person were commanded to only have one child each and to never commit incest, lest the child with major Loptir blood might be born. And yes, Sigun broke that rule by having two children. Manfroy captured and brainwashed Deirdre so that he might present her to Arvis, her half-brother. It should be mentioned that only Manfroy knew that they were related. Deirdre ended up having twins with Arvis, and Julius obtained major Loptir blood, while Julia obtained no Loptir blood. And if you think that the incest children are strange, Seliph and Julia can get married due to a programming bug. And while that sounds innocent on the part of developers, it's easily accomplished because they start out with nearly maxed out love points. Yeah, no idea who decided to make that decision. Anyway, Sigurd is unaware of what happened to Deirdre and continues fighting his war as his allies conspire against him. Fighting to make it to the Emperor and clear his name, Sigurd's father is killed by traitors, his best friend and sister are killed by mercenaries, and as he engages Reptor's forces on the battlefield, the fire mages under Ida's command change allegiances to help Sigurd. Ida then tells Sigurd that Arvis had always believed in his innocence and prepared a celebration for him now that the traitors have been disposed of. Instead, Arvis introduces Sigurd to his new wife Deirdre, before having Sigurd and his army executed by fire. Emblem. Ida is also the mother of Sias, and Arvis is the father, although Ida dies without explanation in the 6 years between these events and Thracia 776. While Sias doesn't appear in Genealogy, according to his epilogue, Sias lives past the ending of Genealogy. When Manfroy presents Julius with the Tome of Loptis, he becomes possessed and kills Deirdre. With only one parent left, it's time to talk about Arvis. In the second half of Genealogy, Arvis is the Emperor of Granvale, but a leader in name only. After the death of Deirdre and the corruption of his son, he realized that he was but a pawn in Manfroy's game. In a last act of defiance, he gifts Tyrfing to a bishop in the hopes that Seliph will be able to fix his mistakes, but despite his desire to undo the past, he fights with all his might and dies against Seliph's army. Before we move on, let's review the family tree while looking at one last fun factoid. Julius is lovers with Reptor's granddaughter Ishtar. Ishtar and Julius are distant cousins. Also, Ishtar's parents die, so consider her number 10 and a half. Number 10, Sarah from Thracia. Sarah's father was murdered by her grandfather, Manfroy. Her mother is unmentioned, and I hope that doesn't need any more explaining. Number 9, Dimitri from Three Houses. Dimitri's parents were the king and queen of Fargus, but his mother had died of a plague before the start of the game. Dimitri's father and stepmother were killed in what is known as the Tragedy of Dusker, an event where Dimitri's parents, among others, were assassinated. And I gotta say, he doesn't handle death very well. Well, except when he's handling death, then he's doing it really well. Actually, he's pretty good at death, really. Number 8, Dedue from Three Houses. After the tragedy of Dusker, most of the people of Dusker were killed as scapegoats, including Dedue's parents. Number 7, Edelgard from Three Houses. Prior to the game, Edelgard's mother was relocated to Fargus, where she married King Lambert, Dimitri's father. Yep, Edelgard is Dimitri's sister-in-law. While I'm not sure if Edelgard's father is dead, he last appears in the game sickly and says, "I do not have much time left in the world," and then the game does a 3-year time skip, so I'm pretty sure he's dead. Also, another fun incest fact, Dimitri has a crush on Edelgard. Number 6, Byleth from Three Houses. Byleth's father is Geralt. Even before Three Houses came out, everyone just assumed he would die, but he actually survives for a rather long amount of time, comparatively. Yeah, he still dies though. Gets killed by a cheap shot by a shape-shifting Awooga Booba lady. Haven't we all been there? Byleth's mother is Citri, a nun at Garrick Mach Monastery. Rhea hoped that by placing Sothis' heart in the bodies of mortals that Sothis could be revived, and Citri was chosen to be a vessel for Sothis. When giving birth, Byleth lacks a heartbeat, so in order to save Byleth, she requests that Sothis' heart is removed from her and given to Byleth. While the procedure saves Byleth, it kills Citri. 5 and 4, Mist and Ike from Path of Radiance. Their mother was tasked with keeping Luran's medallion, which was a medallion that contained the chaotic half of the goddess Ashunira. Upon touching it, their father Grail went insane and murdered their mother as Ike watched. The Black Knight would later seek the best Grail in a duel to prove himself the greatest swordmaster in all the world, but Grail is unable to give him even the satisfaction, as he had slashed his dominant hand after murdering his wife so that he would never be able to wield a sword again. And then also dies in front of Ike. Number 3, Alir from Engage. Yeah, this game isn't out yet, and this isn't really a spoiler, this is a prediction. Before we close out the list, I wanted to do some honorable mentions. Feel free to pause the video if you want to know more about the character. Chris, the optional orphan. Rhea, the Schrodinger's orphan. Seteth, Macule, and Endek, the probable orphans. Alois, the too boring for this video orphan. Yasuhiro Tsurugi, the spin-off game orphan. Marianne, the my parents might have turned into monsters orphan. Amelia, the fake orphan. Tatiana, the generic orphan. Almond Celica, the did I really forget to mention the main characters who are also Fire Emblem engaging in in-law incest? Whoops, I guess so, haha. Orphans. Valbar, the I guess he was kind of old orphan. Sonia, Marla, and Hestia, the okay, I really should have included more Gaiden characters, orphans. Lind, the wow, I didn't even have to dip into the Shadow Dragon roster to come up with way over 100 orphans, orphan. Navarre, the manga-only orphan. Midia, the okay, I'm going to stop looking up characters with dead parents and finish the video, orphan. And finally, the last entries, number 2 and 1, Ellis and her brother Marth. The trend had to have started somewhere, and who better for the number 1 spot than the First Lord in Fire Emblem himself. Their father, King Cornelius, dies during the start of the War of Shadows after he is betrayed by his ally, King Gil. Their mother, Lisa, is captured and later killed by Morzas, a minor antagonist in Shadow Dragon. It's finally over. I've tried to make this video several times over 3 years, and while it took a long time to make, it feels so good to finally have it done. My next video will take even more time to make, and it's really something special, so I recommend slugscribing to not miss it. Now that I don't have to talk about Fire Emblem Orphans anymore, I'm glad I can finally get to work on it. Wait, it looks like I have a message.